Parents, just a quick note. 2 things. 1, if you want to turn today's Storytime video into a homeschooling English language arts video, check in the description box below and you will see a link to printable PDF worksheets. 2, if you are interested in starting your homeschooling journey, but you don't know where to start and you work full-time, I've got you covered. Check out my latest book, Indoctrination or Education, 6 action steps to successfully transition your child from public school to homeschool. Enjoy the show. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Authorized. I am your hostess, Christina Nicole Smith, and today's Storytime book is The Fortune Tellers, written by LLOYD ALEXANDER and illustrated by TRINA SCHART HYMAN. Now, before we get ready, I just want to give you a quick reminder to click that like button if you are enjoying these videos. Okay? Let's get started. A young carpenter was unhappy in his trade. Will I be hammering and sawing the rest of my days? He asked himself. Without wife or sweetheart, and nothing but long labor for little pay? He kept wondering if the future held anything better. Hearing that a fortune teller had come to the neighboring town, he set off eagerly to learn the answers to his questions. He found the prophet living in a room above a cloth merchant's shop. My first prediction is this, the fortune teller said before the carpenter could begin. You're going to pay me a nice fee, but that's a mere trifle to someone destined for wealth. Do you see me rich then? Exclaimed the carpenter, gladly handing over the coins the fortune teller demanded. Rich you will surely be, answered the fortune teller, settling his magic cap on his head and gazing into the crystal ball on the table. On one condition, that you earn large sums of money. Marvelous, cried the carpenter. Things look brighter already, and with so much wealth, will I be famous too? No question about it, said the fortune teller, once you become well known. Amazing, said the carpenter, but now, tell me, will I marry and be happy ever after? You shall wed your true love, said the fortune teller, if you find her and she agrees, and you shall be happy as any in the world if you can avoid being miserable. Better and better, said the carpenter, and shall we have a long life together? The longest, replied the fortune teller, again peering into the crystal ball. Only one thing might cut it short, an early demise. Wonderful, cried the carpenter. Thank you, Master Seer, thank you. With that, he left the fortune teller and hurried homeward, impatient for all these good things to happen. He had scarcely gone halfway when he thought of a dozen more questions he was burning to ask. So he turned around and ran back as fast as he could. To his surprise and disappointment, he found the room empty. The fortune teller's cap and crystal ball were on the table. Puzzling over what had become of their owner, the carpenter ventured to pick up the objects, eyeing them with fear and fascination. As he did, the door flew open and in stormed the cloth merchant's wife. She stopped in her tracks and her eyes popped in astonishment. A miracle, she burst out. Only this morning you were a scruffy old codger. You've changed yourself into a handsome young man. What powers you have, she went on. To think I took you for a fraud and was coming to throw you out of the house. Honored guest, stay as long as you like. I'll never ask a penny's rent if you'll just tell our fortunes. The carpenter tried to explain, but the cloth merchant's wife would hear none of it. She called in her husband and daughter. They all insisted so firmly that the carpenter at last put on the cap, sat down at the table, and peered into the crystal ball. Tell me straight off, said the cloth merchant's wife. Are we to be rich, with fine clothes, horses, and herds of cattle? Though he stared and squinted, the bewildered carpenter saw nothing whatever. At a loss for what else to do, he recalled what the fortune teller had told him. "Yes, enormously rich," said the carpenter. "As soon as you gain a lot of money, you'll have all those good things once you can afford to buy them." "Shall we live long and happy?" asked the cloth merchant. "Indeed so," replied the carpenter. "You need only stay healthy and keep breathing." "And I?" asked the cloth merchant's daughter. "Shall I find my true love?" "Ah, as for that," said the carpenter, blushing a little, "I can assure you it will happen. In fact, it's happened already." Hearing the marvelous profit, the neighbors came clamoring to know their futures, pressing coins into the hands of the carpenter, who told the same to each in turn. "If that's all there is to it," he said to himself, "I like it better than carpentry." So instead of going back to his hammer and saw, he set up as a fortune teller. His fame spread quickly. He grew richer than he had ever dreamed, married the cloth merchant's daughter, and lived long years of happiness. As to the real fortune teller, while he had been leaning over the balcony, wondering if tomorrow would be hotter than yesterday, he lost his balance, tumbled down into a passing cart, and jolted the driver off the seat. The frightened ox bolted, went plunging through the town into the savannah, where the fortune teller was thrown clear, only to be chased by a lion, and as he climbed a tree to escape, he broke open a hornet's nest and, fighting off the angry swarm, was snatched from the branch by a giant eagle, who carried him aloft and dropped him into a river, where he was swept downstream and never seen or heard from again. Despite his wealth and fame, the carpenter never forgot his benefactor. Although in time he gave up wondering what had happened to the fortune teller, the carpenter thought of him frequently with warmth and gratitude for having seen the future so clearly. The end. Okay, and now I have some questions. What did you think about that story? That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed reading this story to you, and I enjoyed reading this story myself, and that's why I wanted to share it. But what did you think about this fortune teller and his fortunes? I mean, okay, so let's go back. One of the fortunes he gave the carpenter was, "Rich you will surely be on one condition, that you earn large sums of money." Now, does that just sounds like common sense, right? So let me ask you this. What did you think about the carpenter's, the carpenter's willingness to be able to allow this man to tell him things that were just common sense, but he's paying him like it's going to be like this man is seeing the future? What do you think about that? Do you think it's important to use, this is a big word, you may have not heard it before, but what do you think about the importance of using discernment? And discernment is just thinking critically. So the carpenter wanted out of carpentry so bad, and he just was thinking to himself, well, will I just be doing this forever? I want to do something different. So do you think that you would have gone to see a fortune teller yourself? Or if you're in a situation that you don't like, what do you do about it? Do you take matters into your own hands and say, okay, let me think about this and let me see how I can change it and what feels good and what feels right to me? Or do you seek counsel from outside people? Do you listen to your inner guidance, in other words? So You know how all of us have like this internal guidance or a voice that comes to us and say, hey, don't do that. That, you know, now you're on the right track, things like that. Do you ever listen to that? Or would you, like I asked, would you go and seek external guidance and second guess that voice, that inner guidance inside of you? You know, I think it's pretty interesting. It was, I don't, you know, what happened in this book, I don't know if that would always necessarily happen in real life, because the guy actually, the carpenter actually got fortune. He wed somebody that he really wanted to marry, that he thought was beautiful. And they had a family and lived happily for long years. But did you see what he was doing? He wasn't really a fortune teller, but he took up the craft. I wonder if he got, good at it. You know, people, once they start doing things, you can kind of sense and get better at something the longer you do it. But initially, when he started, he was actually a fraud. He was a fraud. What do you think about that? Do you think that that was appropriate for him to defraud those people like that? Let's just talk about it plainly. He was lying. He presented himself as something that he wasn't. Do you think that that was right, what he did? And what happened with the fortune teller? If you had to take a guess, why do you think that that happened to him? His demise came the way it did. And then my last question is this. What do you think the moral of the story was? I think I know, but I'm going to let you answer that. And I'll see you next time on Authorized.